Now that Tears of the Kingdom has finally released, Starfield is my most anticipated game for the rest of the year. As a single-player sci-fi action RPG set in space, it kinda ticks all my boxes as a gamer. And yet despite that, I do find myself genuinely worried about the release of this game, mainly for two reasons. The first reason is, this is a Bethesda game. Now, I like Bethesda as a developer, I really do, and you can't deny that they've released some of the most highly rated games ever made. But you also can't deny that even the most popular games in their roster are also somewhat infamous for their bugginess, their jankiness, their Bethesda physics, etc. People know what I mean when I say a Bethesda game or Bethesda physics, right? Skyrim is widely regarded as the best game ever made, but it still has a bit of a reputation for jank, instability, bugs, general kind of weirdness when it comes to the building of the game. I think Bethesda are very good at crafting a world that feels engaging and immersive, and good at writing dialogue and characters, but honestly, they're a little bit shaky when it comes to actually making the games, so that's one reason that I'm sort of concerned about Starfield. The other reason is that it's a modern AAA sci-fi game being released amid an awful lot of hype and after several delays. Sound familiar? For some reason, over the last few years, we've seen an awful lot of modern AAA games being released in generally broken, unfinished, or otherwise disappointing states. Cyberpunk 2077 is the first example that springs to mind, a game that still hasn't really outrun its reputation for bugs, even though nowadays it's relatively stable. Ultimately, Cyberpunk made a pretty bad first impression, and that's what can make and break a good launch. I remember hearing about Cyberpunk and being excited about it, but I still decided to wait for a couple weeks just in case it wasn't as good as it seemed, and honestly, I'm pretty happy I made that decision. I ended up buying it a little bit later on sale and once some of the bugs had been fixed, and I had a much better time with it. That being said, people were still pretty unhappy with the way the game was when it launched, and it caused an awful lot of controversy. Other games more recently have been released with performance issues, like the Callisto Protocol had some pretty big FPS problems at launch, and then it was killed by the Dead Space remake coming out just a few weeks later. Jedi Survivor also had big FPS problems on launch, but unlike Cyberpunk, I don't think anyone was really expecting Jedi to be quite as good as it was, so generally speaking, less people were disappointed by the initial problems, and it generally didn't cause as much controversy because the problems got fixed pretty quickly, and a lot of people were willing to give it a second chance and saw that it's actually quite a good game. Cyberpunk, meanwhile, was hyped to oblivion and then bugged to hell, so generated a lot of fury on the internet that ultimately marred its reputation for a long time, in my opinion. Looking back, we can also see that Bethesda's record on this front is far more Cyberpunk than it is Jedi Survivor, which is to say that it's taken much longer for their games to recover from the reputation damage incurred upon launch. I'm talking about Fallout 76, again, and I think the canvas bag story from that game works as a pretty neat metaphor for the launch. Basically, Bethesda promised the people who bought the £180 Power Armor version of Fallout 76 a special high-quality West Tech canvas bag. But what they actually got was cheap acrylic garbage. The point, of course, is not the actual bags, but it's that the fans expected a high-quality product and got given something far worse instead, which obviously is very nicely analogous to the game itself. Bethesda did send the bags out, of course, which sort of correlates with how they fixed the game to the point that it's actually playable now, but the stain on 76's reputation does, of course, remain, and it ends up being just another point in the argument that Bethesda don't really know how to make a game. So overall, when you think about the state of gaming nowadays, combined with what Bethesda's reputation is, that all has me pretty worried for the release of Starfield. If I had to guess, I'd say it's more likely that Starfield's going to be a good game at its core, but just a little bit buggy on the surface, as opposed to rotten to the core and deeply flawed like Fallout 76 or Redfall, another big disappointment that recently released under the Bethesda banner. Of course, Bethesda didn't develop Redfall, Arcane Studios did, but Bethesda still published it. Of course, all going well, Starfield will be released in perfect condition and will work perfectly every time, but, well, this is Bethesda we're talking about, so of course I'm still going to pre-order Starfield when it comes out and play it on launch, but if there's any big performance issues, I'm not going to be surprised. Just disappointed. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more gaming videos of this kind, then subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what games you want to see me talk about next. Be sure to follow me on Twitch as well. I've just started streaming on there a bit more now that my exams are finished, and I'm hoping to get a bit more of a following on there. I'm aiming for 50 followers to get me affiliate link, and once that happens I might be able to start streaming much more consistently. Let me know if you want to see me tackle any more games in the future, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye!